Catherine, a self-righteous HOA member, once again tried to bully me over something trivial, this time claiming I couldn't park my truck on my own land. Her smug attitude and false accusations pushed me to the edge, but what she didn't know was that I had a secret that could change everything. When I revealed that I oversee all HOAs nationwide, the tables turned in an instant. But just wait until you hear how her arrogance led to a humiliating defeat, and how justice ultimately came crashing down in the most satisfying way. I had just returned to my ranch after a long week away. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the fields, and I was ready to enjoy a quiet evening on my property. The last thing I expected was to see Catherine standing there, hands on her hips, glaring at my truck parked just inside the gate. Now, Catherine wasn't just any neighbor. She was the kind of person who knew every detail about everyone else's life, particularly when it came to rules, regulations, and things that should be done a certain way. I had dealt with her before once or twice when she'd called the authorities over the smallest things, like a tree branch that might have been hanging a few inches too low over her property line, or a truck I parked for just a few hours. But today, it was something different. She was practically shaking with anger, her face flushed, and her voice high-pitched as she yelled at me, pointing towards my own truck. "You can't park that here! This is a violation! You're breaking the law!" Her words were sharp and accusatory, as if I were some criminal trespassing on her land. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, before I could tell her that I owned the property, that I was just home, she was already pulling out her phone. Without hesitation, she dialed 911, her finger tapping on the screen, as if she'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. Yes, I need to report an illegal parking situation. This man is breaking the law, and I need someone to come out here immediately, she said, her voice cutting through the still air. I stood there for a moment, stunned. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. The ridiculousness of the situation hit me all at once. Here I was, standing on my own property, and she was about to involve the police over parking a truck. As Catherine ranted, her voice growing louder and more shrill with every word, it became clear that she wasn't just some overzealous neighbor trying to enforce a rule. No, she was something worse, an embodiment of every small-minded HOA member who used their position as a way to feel important. Every word that came out of her mouth felt like a reminder of just how self-righteous she was, as if the world revolved around her interpretation of rules. Her tone wasn't just about enforcing a parking space. It was about power. She was the type of person who believed her role in the HOA gave her the authority to dictate every little thing around here, and it was infuriating. In my mind, I started to imagine her as a walking rulebook, rigid and unbending, full of petty complaints and an inflated sense of importance. There was no room for logic, no room for compromise. Just her rules, and the need to control everything around her. It was the sort of behavior that only got worse when people let it. I watched as her face turned bright red, almost matching the intensity of her tirade. The moment she heard my words, her expression shifted, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. She stopped mid-rant, her eyes widening slightly as the truth hit her. "I oversee all HOA boards nationwide," I said calmly, my voice firm. The words felt almost satisfying, knowing exactly how they would land. Her eyes flickered with disbelief. For the first time, she looked less like a woman ranting about some trivial infraction and more like someone who'd been blindsided by an unexpected punch. It wasn't just the shock of the revelation, but the sinking realization that she'd made a huge mistake. She was playing her usual game, but she had no idea who she was messing with. And in that moment, I felt the deep, unrelenting anger rise within me. This wasn't just about a truck parked on my own land anymore. It was about years of dealing with people like Catherine, those who saw themselves as gatekeepers of order, but who were nothing more than bullies hiding behind rules that didn't even apply. The more I watched her, the more my dislike for her grew. I could feel my patience wearing thin, my resolve hardening. She had no idea what she was about to unleash. The sirens cut through the air like a knife, and within minutes, the flashing lights of the police cruiser reflected off the trees, illuminating the dusty driveway. Catherine stood there, arms crossed, smugly waiting as if she were already the judge and jury. I could feel my blood begin to boil. This was it. She had escalated things from ridiculous to absurd. The officers stepped out of the car, their eyes scanning the scene, taking in the sight of my truck, parked exactly where it should have been. They didn't seem alarmed, but Catherine wasted no time laying it on thick. "He's threatening me," she said, her voice dripping with faux indignation. "He was parked here, and when I told him he couldn't, he started yelling and acting aggressive." Her words hung in the air like a cloud of poison, and I could feel my temper rising. This was exactly what I had feared. A woman who had no problem twisting the truth to suit her agenda. She'd already called the cops over nothing before, but now it was clear that she was trying to paint me as the villain in a story that wasn't even real. I took a deep breath, stepping forward, finally unable to hold back any longer. "I manage all HOA boards in the country," I said, my voice steady but edged with authority. The words hung in the air, louder than any of her accusations. The officers froze. Their expressions shifted from casual indifference to wide-eyed surprise. I saw their postures stiffen, as if the entire tone of the situation had just changed. One officer took a step back, exchanging a quick look with his partner. They were processing what I'd just said, the weight of the revelation sinking in. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just a petty dispute over parking. This was a battle of credibility, and I had just leveled the playing field. Catherine's smug grin faltered, and the air between us seemed to thicken. She had misjudged me, and now it was clear. The power had shifted, and I wasn't the one on the defensive anymore. I could see the officers' demeanor change, their focus narrowing as they began to understand the situation from a different angle. I wasn't just some random guy. There were rules here. Real ones that mattered. Catherine's game of playing the victim wasn't going to work this time. The fight had just begun, and I knew I had the upper hand. As the police car finally pulled away, its lights fading into the distance, a strange stillness fell over the property. The tension that had been hanging in the air for what felt like hours slowly began to dissipate. But Catherine remained standing there, like a statue frozen in her own shame. Her chest heaved with frustration, her face flushed from humiliation. I could practically feel the heat radiating off of her, but there was nothing she could do to take back what had just happened. She hadn't just messed with the wrong person. She had made the mistake of thinking she could play her little HOA power games without consequences. But now, she had exposed her own arrogance, her overconfidence that she could bully me into submission just like she had done to so many others. The look on her face was priceless, a mix of disbelief and anger, like a villain who had just realized their plan had crumbled. I stood there on my land, arms crossed, letting the moment sink in. It wasn't just the fact that I had won. It was the way it had unfolded. Justice wasn't merely served. It had been flipped on its head. Catherine had thought she was in control, thought she had the upper hand because she knew how to push people around with her false authority. But not today. Today, I was the one in charge, and her defeat was as sweet as it was deserved. There was something deeply satisfying about the way she was forced to stand there, impotent and exposed, knowing that no matter how much she wanted to argue, she had lost. Not only had I outplayed her in every way, but I had also shown her that sometimes the rules of power don't work the way you think they do. As I turned and walked back toward my house, a small smile crept onto my face. This wasn't just about the parking space or some petty dispute. It was about respect, dignity, and setting the record straight. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had truly won.